Logistics Support Analysis Records. 4 words on their own, powerless. But when they combine, sort of like a Voltron Megazord, they become the LSAR. The backbone to any modern platform, whether that be a ship, an aircraft, or a weapon system. There's an enormous amount of support data running in the background to make sure everything runs smoothly. Listen as my guest tries to educate me in the ways of the LSAR. Welcome to the briefing room. My name is Karl and I will be your host for today. A bit of reasoning behind today's episode is that on 2 of our previous episodes, there's been moments where the guests have mentioned LSARs or Logistic Support Analysis Records. And I thought it was about time that we did it justice and made a whole episode on LSARs and what they are, what they do, what they look like, and how they're used. Joining me today is the LSAR extraordinaire, Graham. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Thanks, Karl. I'm Graham. I'm a principal support engineer here at CDS Defence and Security. I've worked for the company for 2 years, or just over 2 years, and I've spent the last 23 years of my career working in and around LSARs.
Thank you for joining me today. I think we should just jump straight into it. So for those who don't live and breathe acronyms, what exactly is an LSAR?
An LSAR is a Logistic Support Analysis Record. And as the name suggests, it's a record of the logistic support analysis, or LSA as it's known, performed on a platform or a system.
Okay, so from now on, I think instead of saying the full Logistic Support Analysis Record, I always used to call it reports, but now it's record. I think we just call it LSARs and LSAs from now on, just so it's easier. It saves the listener a bit of time as well. So what exactly is an LSA?
So LSA is a process of analysis performed on a platform or a system from its concept to its disposal. So throughout the life of the platform. It's used to help influence the design of the product, to make and support the product as cost effective and as easy to maintain as possible. You start with a concept, then you assess options to create the best design solution and support solution. An LSA is one of the elements of integrated logistics support, ILS.
Right, okay. I've heard that one as well, ILS and IPS as well. If I was to ask you, what is an LSAR in 60 seconds? Elevator pitch. You've got 60 seconds to try and win me over or try and educate me on what an LSAR is. Go.
No pressure then. So think about when you're buying your next car. Yeah. Okay, so you've got an idea in your head, a concept. You have requirements, so cost, you've got a budget. The size of the engine, perhaps, the insurance group, the amount of seats. You might have a big family, you might only need 4 seats, you might need a 7-seater, you might need a big boot, or that might not be relevant. How often does a car need to be serviced? How much does the service cost? You just keep thinking about those questions that you're going to ask yourself. Once you've got an idea of what you want, you'll then go to do a tour of the garages, or you might use an online tool such as Auto Trader. You'll choose then a few different models and compare them, and then you'll pick the one that best suits your needs. What you're actually doing is perform an LSA. And whether you write those answers down, whether the answers are in your head, whether you put them into a little spreadsheet, that is an LSAR. Simple as that. Right.
Okay. Well, there you go then. That's the end of the episode. That was all neatly done for 5 minutes. Right. Let's dig a little bit deeper. So what does the LSAR record?
Okay. So an LSAR can record many different types of information. Annual operating requirements, AOR. So how often are we going to operate the equipment? Reliability data, FAMICA, which I'll elaborate on later, RCM logic. So what is the failure rate of the equipment? What is likely to cause it to fail? What is the effect locally and on the end items on the platform? How critical is the failure? What can we put in place to help to prevent the failure? So inspections, testings, scheduled replacement for life-critical items. This all leads us to then maintenance task analysis. So what do we need to perform the maintenance task? So we need spares, support equipment, manpower, facilities. All this information can be stored in the LSAR. Spares is a huge area. The AOR, the failure rate, can help drive spares modeling, so ranging and scaling of spares. There's an abundance of fields available to populate relating to provisioning those spares. Dimensions, weights, packaging requirements, hazardous indicators, shelf lives and how to extend the shelf life, calibration, does the item need calibrating, unit of issue, how is it issued, reference designators that are used in wiring diagrams, and so on and so forth. Other areas in the LSAR can also hold facilities data, training needs, personnel requirements, transportation data, ammunition requirements, and unit under test data. So quite a lot.
I was just about to say that is a lot of data. For a ship or a aircraft or a weapons system or weapons platform, why is it important, or why is an LSAR so important to a weapon system or an aircraft or a ship?
So all platforms have to have a support solution. Bringing a new platform into service is just the beginning, and the majority of the program budget is spent on supporting the equipment for the next 20 to 30 years, or the life of the project.
Okay.
Getting that support solution right is critical to ensuring the platform is maintained in the most efficient manner and making sure every penny is well spent. An LSAR is the best place to house the data used to create, maintain, and enhance the support solution, as everything is held in one place, and that's why it's so important to a platform.
So is it an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, or is it like our SharePoint system where
you can an LSAR, as I said, can be anything you want, so you can have it in an Excel spreadsheet, but it's all tables. So think about an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Think about the tabs along the bottom. Yeah. Each tab is a table, and that different table will hold a different type of set of information.
Right, okay.
So you've got groups of tables that hold your provisioning data, your facilities data, your maintenance task analysis data, your reliability data, and they all like knit together. So if you've got a maintenance task that requires a spare, it looks in the correct provisioning table and sucks that information into the maintenance task.
Right, okay.
And then your reliability data, when I was talking about failures, that your reliability data might say this piece of equipment or this item might fail because if it's a relay, let's say, that the contacts stick together.
Yeah.
So then you would say, okay, so how critical is it? Is the aircraft going to fall out the sky, or have we got redundancy? And it is like it's as simple as that. How critical is it? So if it's not critical, can we just like inspect it, like do a pre-flight inspection or inspect it periodically? So then you say, okay, I need to inspect that item, so I need an inspection task. So then you have to then go and get all the spares, the tools, the technical documentation, the personnel, that how long it's going to take, and put that maintenance task together. So they all knit, all these different tables, all like linked together. And
then, so when Andy was talking about digital engineering, you relying on the LSAR.
Yeah.
Your tabs at the bottom of Excel take it, and you're saying that everything's sort of feeding into those tabs. The digital engineering would, when you're referencing the
that's
LSAR,
a third party.
They would look into one of those tabs to get that data.
So it's either dynamically linked or it's like extracted and dropped into the digital engineering software, the digital twin. I've had to like do a bit of research on digital engineering because it doesn't mean a lot to me, despite the fact that I watched the podcast, Andrew's podcast. I'm 55 and my brain's full, so like in order to like accept and learn about digital engineering, something else like needs to go. So I needed to get an understanding of it so that I could answer the question that you were asking on it.
It's weird that like you're saying, you don't know much about like digital engineering, but then what Andy was saying, like digital engineering, like LSARs are so important to the digital engineering. It's so weird that it wouldn't be like a both sort of relying on each other. It's more of a sort of
they do, but I've never worked in that environment, you say. So I've only ever worked in an environment where the LSAR drives the technical publications or the reliability is brought in as like from an external source. So we like populate the reliability data. So that's what I've done like for the past 23 years. Technical pub. So Dan Sample, I know a lot about technical publications and all. I've had jobs in tech pubs.
So you'd be happy to come onto another podcast episode to talk about tech pubs.
If Dan doesn't want to, then I might need to do a little. I might need a little bit longer than 3 days to put the prep together. But like I've had jobs. I used to build IETPs like on Type 45 destroyers within like the technical pubs area, and I used to like manage what they call the data module requirements list. So, I don't know if you know. So, within an interactive electronic technical publication, you have data modules. So, a data module is just like a piece of information on a piece of equipment. So you could have like multiple data modules on this laptop. You could have like a description and function. You would have like an illustrated parts catalog, for want of a better word. You would have all of your different maintenance data modules. So if you were able to replace components, each one of them components would have its own replace, and then you'd have a test data module. So you might have 20 different data modules just for that laptop. And you put them all, like you categorize the data modules in like a tree, we call it a standard numbering system. So you break like a product breakdown structure. So that's how you put it. So you put all these data modules against that. So I used to manage that as well as the IETP in like a former life. So I know a lot about it. And LSARs and tech pubs are like when it's done right, in my opinion, they're very interlinked. There's a lot of like interlinking between them, and what they call initial provisioning as well. So that's just initial provision is what you do to like end up with your Illustrator parts catalog.
I'm going to list a couple of words and numbers now that doesn't really make sense to me. I'm hoping you can make sense of them. Standards like mil-spec 1388 and defstan 006-60. What are they? Well, just what?
Mil standard 1388 2B and defstan 0060, as we kind of refer to them, they've been the specifications most used up to now in electronic LSAR. So certainly on the projects that I've worked on for 23 years, and I've worked for sort of quite a few companies in that time. The original United States mil standard 1388 dates back to the early 1970s. Back then, LSAR weren't created in electronic format; they were created on paper, in huge filing cabinets full of LSA data. The UK MOD then created defstan 0060 in the late 1990s, as mil standard 1388 2B had been cancelled a couple of years earlier. Defstan 0060 itself was replaced in 2010 by defstan 00600, but both 0060 and 1388 2B are still commonly used to create LSARs. LSARs last a long time through the life of the product. So the specification that was in place 10 years previous, it still gets used for the life of the project. Now, moving forward, ASD S3000L, which is one of the S series of specifications, is gathering speed as a preferred specification for LSA. And companies are now offering software solutions for S3000L compliant LSAR.
I understood most of that. So how is all this data actually organized?
So the LSAR data is held using tables in a relational database. So if we use DefStan 0060 as an example, the tasks are categorized by type. So for example, H tables hold the provisioning data, B tables hold the reliability and maintainability data, C tables are where you find your maintenance task analysis. And there are actually 11 table types in total.
Okay.
Each table group is then split into individual tables. So if we use the C tables as an example, the maintenance tables. So we've got table CA as the top level maintenance task. Table CB holds the subtasks which make up the complete task. So the subtasks are how we break up the task. So the subtask can be the safety requirements, prerequisites, so warnings and cautions, required conditions. So if we had a piece of equipment that was behind a panel, we would have a subtask used to open or remove that panel to access the equipment. Once we'd replaced the equipment, if it was a replacement task, we'd have a subtask to close the panel. And then we'd probably have a subtask to test the panel, to test the equipment, that we'd replaced. If these subtasks are used like multiple times throughout the LSAR, so for example, if you had a server cabinet, with sort of 20 equipment racks inside it, these subtasks can be written once within a separate task and then referred to for each of those sort of 20, 30 items that you want to replace. So this saves writing the procedure over and over again. And if we go back to our C tables, table CI holds the spares and the consumables within the task. Table CG holds the support equipment, so the tooling and test equipment. And there are other C tables that hold the personnel requirements and things like that. All of these tables have key fields to uniquely identify each record, and the tables are linked using a parent-child relationship. Each table is then made up of data elements, and the specification, and we're talking about DefStan 0060, dictates what can be held in each of those data element fields. The platform itself is represented by building a structure using source data like a bill of materials or engineering drawings. This structure becomes the tree and the branches that most of the data hangs off.
Okay.
So each record within the structure has a unique logistic control number, and we refer to these branches as LCNs. The relevant part number for each of those locations, branches, LCNs, whatever you want to call it, can then be added as a child record, and the LSAR builds momentum by adding the reliability data, the maintenance tasks, and even the source of the data can be added for configuration management.
So when you were talking about that cabinet that had all sort of different compartments in there, instead of having to repeat close the cabinet or something like multiple times, you can just say, right, refer to this bit, and then all of those sort of cabinet doors or panels then refer to that one piece.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Exactly, yeah. So each one of those maintenance tasks to replace, when you're telling it to open the cabinet door or close it or test it afterwards, it refers to a separate maintenance task where you've written it, and you've written it once.
I hate to imagine how much paper there used to be for the printing.
Exactly.
The cogs are starting to slowly turn. Right, once built, how do you actually use it?
Okay, so customers and other departments within your organization they'll usually ask you for specific information about a system within the platform or a particular variant of the equipment, because the LSAR can handle different variants of the same equipment within the same end item platform using applicability. So just to give you an example, there are 6 Type 45 destroyer warships.
Okay.
They're all slightly different. They look the same when they're in the sea, but there's minor differences.
Okay.
Using applicability, the data for each ship can be identified where it differs. So if we're going back to reporting, there are various standard reports that can be run and extracted. One of the most common is the LSAR 19 report, and that details all the maintenance tasks. So it includes the spares, the manpower, support equipment, man hours, and all the information that makes up a maintenance task. So this report can be run against the whole of the LSAR, against a particular system within the LSAR. So you might just be interested in the fuel system, for example, or a particular variant. So if you just want to run that against ship 2 of the 6 we were talking about, you can do that.
Okay.
There are also reports for reliability, provisioning, transport, facilities, support equipment, and many, many more. And you can run different reports against each of those topics. On top of that, as well as the standard reports, SQL queries can be built by clever people. So you can build a bespoke report that isn't covered by one of the standard reports from the specification.
Okay, I was just going to ask what SQL stand for.
Something query language. Okay. Standard query language.
So something practical you can generate from an LSAR?
Something practical. So there's lots of software, as you can imagine, to accommodate your LSAR. If you get the right software, your technical publications, for example, can be created from your LSAR. Okay. The data that you populated to create your maintenance tasks can be pushed into an ASD S1000D compliant data module. So again, part of the S series.
Is there a lot of these sort of like really long numbers and letters? Sort of like, it's I get confused all the time. Which one's sort of referring? Yeah.
So ASD S1000D is just the S series specification that deals with technical publications.
Okay.
The S3000L that I referred to earlier is the one for LSA.
Okay.
And there are others that I might just throw into the mix in a few minutes. But yeah, so like I was saying, the data that we use to create our maintenance task in the LSAR can be pushed into an S1000D compliant data module housed within a common source database, CSDB as they're known. The CSDB is linked to the LSAR. And the same also applies to Illustrator parts data modules, so Illustrator parts catalogs. So ASD 2000M this time, compliant initial provision and figures can be created using the data in the LSAR. So you can do that either by using a third-party software link to the LSAR, or again, if you purchase the right software, the IP figures can be created within the LSAR software. These IP figures can then be converted into IP data modules, so Illustrator parts catalogs, using a similar process to how we created the procedural data modules. So this cuts down, as you can imagine, on a lot of duplicated effort. And because you're using the same data, it reduces the chance of introducing mistakes. Now, think of the saying, write once, use many.
Yeah.
Well, this is a huge example of how you can use that in a practical sense.
Okay. So how does this connect to maintenance planning or parts ordering?
Well, maintenance management systems, they can also be linked to the LSAR. A previous project that I worked on, the LSAR data fed directly into UMS. Now, UMS is the maintenance management system used by the UK Navy on its ships.
Okay.
And again, as I said earlier, the LSAR can be used for modelling purposes, ensuring that the correct range and scale of parts are ordered, only ensuring that the parts needed as spares and the correct quantity are held to support the platform.
Yeah, I know you don't want me to ask you any sort of questions that aren't on the script, but I have the feeling in my head of you've got this, say it's like an Excel spreadsheet. I know it's not going to be a burst. The way I'm imagining it in my head, you've got all this data and all these sheets underneath. If you've got so many things dragging and pulling data from that LSAR, how do you know that that's safe? And if that was to be infiltrated by someone, and maybe some of the numbers changed, that then would affect everything else that's pulling into the LSAR?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned configuration management earlier, so you can detail where the information came from. So there are fields which allow you to, and anybody that's putting together an LSAR properly, they won't just throw the figures in or the information in. They'll put the information in, and then they'll detail where they got that information from.
Right. Okay. It was in my head. I was just like, this is sort of like a Wikipedia kind of, what if someone just who had access to it and had ulterior motives, or someone like Fresh who's just going to make a mistake. Like if take Wikipedia for instance, you can go in there and you can edit and make edits, and then someone like my mum could look at the page later, don't know what she's looking like, Michael Bublé or something, and then she sees, oh, he was born in this year, but I've gone in and changed it. That's sort of her coming into the LSAR and taking out Michael Bublé's birth date, whereas I've put that in wrong on purpose. But now she's believed it. So I was thinking, if someone's coming in to get that data from the LSAR, if someone's either put it in wrong on purpose or accident, but you're saying you've got to, when you put the answer in, you can't just put 19 something as the date. You've got to put proof. And
well, yeah. I mean, anything's open to kind of deliberate, misuse.
Yeah.
But with regards to external sources, as I was saying when we were talking about creating the technical publications, that's the way that it does that is it pushes the information in, so it can't come back. It's kind of like a one-way valve. The software LSAR software accounts are like restricted to the people that are allowed to go in and edit the information. You can give people read-only access, but the people that are actually making the changes are limited to the ones that have access. So when I talk about third-party software, there are like limitations to help prevent rogue data getting in, for want of a better word.
So we've had an episode on digital engineering. How does the LSAR connect to digital engineering?
Okay, so we've spoken about reliability data. So the mean time between failures, the failure rate. So how often are we going to predict that something will fail? I mentioned FAMICA earlier, so that's the failure mode effect and criticality analysis. So what will cause a failure? What is the effect and the criticality? We've spoken about the annual operating requirements. So how often are we going to use the equipment? Scheduled and unscheduled maintenance tasks, parts, ranging and scaling. All of this data from the LSAR can be fed into a digital twin to help the digital engineering concept. The results of the digital engineering can then be fed back into the LSAR, drive improvements, and the result in LSAR changes can then be fed back into the digital twin. So it's a continual cycle to develop the optimum solution.
Modelling things like cost and carbon emissions. How does the LSAR sort of help with those?
A lot of the data required to perform cost and carbon modelling analysis is or can be held in the LSAR. The range and quantity of spares, as we've previously talked about, but also the cost of each of those spares can be held. Facilities information, maintenance tasks, including manpower, man hours, task spares requirement, maintenance task times, task frequency, mean time to repair, annual operating requirements. All that information's held in the LSAR. So that can definitely help with modelling cost and I suppose carbon too.
Okay, so you were talking earlier about how it used to not be digital and used to be reams and reams of paper. How has it gone, or has it gone from being a backroom sort of document to something more dynamic?
Yeah, so back in the 1970s, when Mill Standard 1388 was first introduced, as I said earlier, each table record was held in paper format. And I've worked with people who used to manage LSARs when that was the norm. As you can imagine, for a large project, you mentioned ships and aircraft earlier, that would have taken up a lot of space and time and effort, not only to initially populate it, but to update or replace the records as the design or the support changed. Nowadays, LSAR or electronic databases are vastly reducing the time taken, not just to access the records, but to update them as well.
Yeah.
They can be linked to third-party software, so processes can become automated or semi-automated, like the production of the technical publications that we talked about earlier. Spares modeling is also popular as bolt-on software and is used widely throughout the industry.
How long it must have taken to, I want to know something, I need to know something about this piece, how they then would have to, I imagine it would have been stored in a sort of locked away sort of facility, and then you have to find the person that's in charge of it. Then that person has to go and find the right cupboard that's got the right sort of paperwork in there. There's so many headaches. It must be so easy now. Like compared to when you first started out in LSARs, is it sort of like chalk and cheese, like night and day, working on them now than it used to be?
Well, fortunately, like I wasn't working back in the 1970s. I was still at school. But certainly they've evolved. So when I first started working in LSARs, yes, there was an interactive link between the LSAR and the technical publications and the initial provisioning. But nowadays, like we talked about like modeling and linking to other sort of third-party software. That wasn't used when I first sort of got into this in 2002, I think it was.
Right. Okay. So why would anyone outside of the engineering teams care about an LSAR? Why should they? Yeah, why should they care about an LSAR and what it does?
Well, I care, but provisioning departments, as an example, they should care. It'll save them manpower. It'll help them purchase the correct spares and hold the correct quantities. Okay. It'll ensure that the spares that are held in storage are correctly inspected and at the correct intervals, meaning the reduction of spares being discarded because they haven't been maintained in storage properly or they've exceeded their shelf life. It'll also help with packaging requirements and the amount of space required to store the items. The LSAR not only holds the equipment dimensions, but also the packaging information, including dimensions and weights. It'll ensure the correct infrastructure is in place within the storage facility. So the facilities area in the LSAR contains data elements describing the infrastructure that's required. And not just for repair facilities, but for storage facilities as well. So, for example, do we need light, heat, electricity? If we need electricity, is it single phase, three phase, 110, 240, 415? Okay. Do we need pneumatic air? Do we need water? Or all those considerations when it comes to a facility. Having a well-populated LSAR with accurate data will help drive down costs, negating the need for data to be held in several different areas. So less cost, more profit.
Okay, so if I was a decision maker or a client, sort of how would LSAR make my life easier? How for clients, decision makers and maintainers, how would it make their life easier?
Well, with regards to clients, most clients would have a direct access into the LSAR to be able to run their own reports. This enables them to see the bigger picture for themselves, and they're not solely relying on written reports from the customer. They can see at first hand the spares, maintenance, reliability of the product that they're buying, maintainers. So using an LSAR to create an interactive electronic technical publication, like we were talking about earlier, that's a massive benefit to the customer, to the maintainer, sorry.
Okay.
There's a confidence that errors are massively reduced due to data sharing and the right once, use many philosophy we talked about. Yeah. Each item that's going to be used as a spare, a consumable, a piece of support equipment, it has its part number, its natal stock number, and all its other data entered into the LSAR once in one record. And that record is then used throughout the LSAR. In every location, the item appears in the breakdown structure, every maintenance task, and consequently, every maintenance and illustrated parts data module in the IETP. So just to give you a bit of context on the scale, a ship I previously worked on had over 19,000 maintenance data modules in the IETP. And that didn't even include the illustrated parts data modules, the IPCs, which were also generated from the LSAR. Decision makers. So they've got the confidence that they're utilizing best practice to reduce the manpower spent gathering and populating, and that they're populating data, and that they're populating it into a single source rather than multiple databases. Obviously, a reduction in man-hours leads to a reduction in costs.
I just can't help think that you said 19,000 sort of modules. How big are these file sizes? Like, are they quite hefty file sizes, or a complete LSAR that had like 19,000? How big would that file
at the
be?
time? So 15 years ago, we're talking about different technology.
Yeah,
we had to go on board ship to load the publication onto its server. Okay. So if it was on the other side of the world, we didn't have a mechanism to be able to get the information to them securely. So I don't know the exact figures, but they were very big. Let's put it that way.
I can imagine. What is one misconception that you would like to set straight about LSARs?
Okay. So the biggest misconception I have is that, or the biggest misconception is that they cost a lot of money and they're too expensive. But they're only expensive if they're not properly populated and maintained. A well-populated and maintained LSAR will actually bring costs down over the life of the platform due to reduced spares purchasing, only performing the maintenance required, and continual maintenance reviews. Costs can also be reduced by the lack of need for other software products to hold the same data.
Okay.
And because a lot of the data in the LSAR is written once and used over and over again, it reduces the chances of human error. So what I actually think is, can you afford not to use an LSAR?
When you say over the lifetime of the program or piece of equipment, I don't know how long certain pieces of equipment will probably last longer than others, but what's a sort of like a common sort of
average
length?
life?
Yeah, the average life.
Yeah, like I'd say about 20 to 30 years, depending on what the equipment is. Something that's big and expensive, like a warship or a submarine, will
You'd
probably,
hope
you would hope, would last longer because of the costs involved. Then maybe it's like a small kind of man-pack radio or something like that.
So yeah, I would imagine then there would probably be a limitation on how small of a piece of equipment it would actually be beneficial on. Like a big warship that's going to last 30 years, no brainer to LSAR will save it money in the long run. Whereas a small radio, would it be beneficial?
It may or may not. If it's a commercial off-the-shelf product, you would perform limited logistic support analysis, and the specification allows you to what they call tailor things depending on whether or not it's a brand new design or commercial off the shelf. So you weigh up with everything. You weigh up whether or not there is a need.
Yeah, because I imagine there would be a price difference as well with an LSA over a warship and a small sort of radio.
Yeah,
There'd be
it's the man hours.
A tremendous difference in price as well.
Yeah, it's the man hours spent. That's the price, and gathering the data. So something bigger, it has a lot more data than something smaller.
And that, I think, is another briefing complete. Catchphrase. A huge thanks to my guest, Graham, for joining me and helping me sort of make sense and understand a little bit more about LSARs. I'm not completely there, but I think I'm getting the gist of it now. It's starting to make sense. If you've enjoyed the chat and learned something new, then and you're still listening, then thank you for listening. Share with a colleague or a friend or family member, whoever you want to share it with. Remember to like and subscribe, and if you're on YouTube, hit the notification bell to get a notification every time we upload a new video. I'm Karl. This has been the Briefing Room, and I'll see you in the next one. If you want to watch the other episodes where LSARs have been mentioned, digital engineering and sales versus BD, link here. I'll have the 2 videos. I'll just wait a couple of seconds while you make a decision of which one to watch next.